What's everyone's Matt Mrozik, and this will be the second work in progress on the Hulk versus Thor prototype diorama. So I did the skin yesterday. That took basically the entire day to do that, and it's been approved. So I tried doing a live broadcast, but the YouTube video is really choppy and low quality, and then on Facebook, it just didn't look right. It was way dark, like almost black. But this is actually what the skin looks like, and it's been approved. It looks really good. So now I'm in the process of masking off the pants so I can get those painted. So we're going to do that. So I got my camera mounted above. Hopefully you guys can see that. So I've started out with Tamiya tape, and a lot of guys are going to ask me, why don't you use silly putty? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I use silly putty. I have a lot of it, but I only use it for very specific reasons. I'm a tape guy. I love tape. It's what I know. I said this before. I used to paint cars for a living, so I'm very comfortable with tape. And as long as your prep work is good and you've got primer down and you clean the parts, you shouldn't have any lifting. You know, cross your fingers. Doesn't mean I've never had lifting. I have, but you shouldn't have any. So I've done taping videos before. It's not the most exciting thing. A lot of people don't like the mask. I think that's why I got a lot of use silly putty. The thing about silly putty is that it is very difficult to get a very thin line of it. I always find that I have to go touch up all my edges after using silly putty. I think most painters do. After they've done it, they have to go through and brush touch it. I find with masking tape that's rare that I have to do that unless I just totally screwed up my masking. So, and a lot of guys don't like to cut on top of a painted surface. Again, brand new razor blade, so I'm not having to use a lot of pressure. If any pressure, let the blade do the work. I'm not using a mic, so hopefully you guys can hear me because it's easier to work without it attached to me. So I'll just go over the process again. This is a very time-consuming, tedious thing. And it would actually take me longer with silly putty to do this. And the thing I don't like about silly putty, especially on large areas, is that once you get it down, the great thing about silly putty is not super sticky, so it's not going to stick to your surface. But that's also the downside because it's really easy to move after you've put it in place. So that's the downside. So I get small pieces of tape like this, and I leave it really loose because you won't be able to push it into place. I've got a toothpick here where I bit the tip off, so the tip is blunted, it's not sharp. And I push it into place, right into the edge. Just follow the outline of where it needs to go. And if you leave your tape loose and you have smaller pieces of it, it should go right into where you need to go. So then I have a brand new razor blade, and I'm just cutting right along that outline. Just I'm not putting any pressure on. I'm letting the blade do all the work. When you start putting pressure on the blades, when you start slipping up. Now you notice I just cut right to that tip, because what that does now is it relieves the tension on the tape. It allows me to wrap it around that little point right there. If I try to wrap it around that point before cutting, it wouldn't do it. So then again, I just take this and just real lightly and take that off, just like that. And then I take my little toothpick, whatever I'm using, I just seal that edge, just like that. And now I've got this piece that comes across here, and I'm just going to go ahead and use it. And you see I leave the tape loose. I don't pull it taut. I just let it do its thing. So then again, I just push it right into the edge there. And then again, just real lightly with the blade, just like that. And I usually have a pair of tweezers around so I can pick up that tape. Alright, just like that. I won't videotape this whole process because it's the same thing over and over again. But people tend to like in-depth videos. And you'll see here that I got some, on the foot, I've got some paint that's missing. Well, that's because that's the part of the foot that hits the base. So I'll touch that up, but more than likely that's going to come off again. So I'll just brush touch it. You don't see that once it's on the base. And I've got a towel down here to kind of help protect the area, this statue. Again, I just put it down real loose and then push it into place. Just like that. And I'm using a toothpick that I've cut the tip off, because if I left the tip on the toothpick, it would tear the tape. You don't want to tear it, you want it to cut. And also allows me to kind of actually put some good pressure down on the tape without risking the painted surface. Actually, I may need to change this blade. I thought that was brand new. It's not. This one looks brand new. You know your blade's not sharp enough if you try to go touch. See how it's actually pulling on the tape. It's not cutting it. It tells me I need to change this blade, so I'll do that real quick. So if you go to cut your tape and it's not cutting and it's pulling it, then you need to change your blade. So let me get a new blade. And as I always say, get the X-Life number 11 blades. You'll know they're X-Life because, well, it says X-Life, but they also have a blue tint to them. You can get this box of 100 blades on Amazon. I bought 2 boxes of these 5 years ago. And I go through a lot of blades, and I've only used up one entire box. I'm on my second box now. So I go through a lot of blades when I'm masking. Okay. And just leave it in there loose. And it's okay if it overlaps other pieces. We're going to cut it off and take care of it. So just continue this process all the way around on both legs. Before I started masking this, I did take some tape and I did a tape test. I put a piece of tape on the leg. Like this. I just take a piece of tape. Oops, hold on. I put it on, rub it down real good, and I rip it off. And then if it comes off, if nothing comes off, then it usually means I'm good to go. So. Alright, so I'm going to just continue this around the legs, and when I'm done with that, I'll show you the next step. Okay, well, it took about an hour or so, but the feet are all masked off, looking good. And then I just finished it off with saran wrap. And then what I do is put another piece of saran wrap going like against everything, just to double make sure everything's covered well. And then I go around and make sure that all my edges are taken care of, and I've got a good clean line around everything. And if I see something maybe I think could use a little more work, I just kind of make sure that all my edges are sealed really good, and make sure that I don't have any tape up on the pants. I can see a little spot right here that could probably be trimmed a little closer, just so I can avoid having to do any brush touches later. That's the goal here. We'll see. Sometimes I still have to, but a lot of times I don't. If I just take my time masking. So the next thing I'm going to do is I had a little chip out from shipping right here, so I have that piece. I'm going to go get that and glue it into place. I'll be right back. Alright, so I got this little piece right here that just kind of chipped out during shipping, so we're just going to glue it back in real quick with a little bit of super glue. This is just extra thick CA or super glue. Put a little bit on. Okay. Okay, and then we got a little bit of kind of squeezed out here. We're just gonna clean up the Q-tip like that. Hit with a little accelerator to kick it off. And then the other part of pants is this part right here, and this is like you've seen it on other Hulk statues. The part that's kind of like flipped down. And this actually keys into the upper torso. So it comes in something like this, if I remember correctly. Yeah, just like that. So this will get painted. He sent me some reference photos. So we're going to paint this purple, and we're going to weather them up a little bit, not too much. So I'll go ahead and probably paint this purple too, and then I'll do the weathering with dry brushing. If you've seen, like, I think it's the OG Hulk, it's got the pants that are flipped down, it's completely white. Well, that looks completely stupid to me. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that OG Hulk anyway. I think he's ugly. But what do I know? People like what they like. So yeah, so next up will be in the spray booth. I'm going to go ahead and hit this again with some gray primer to get rid of the green. And again, this will be a multi-layer process. Not as much as the green. Basically what I'll do is I will lay down... let's see, probably a dark blue. I have to think about it. Because typically what I would do, yeah, I think I may do a dark blue, highlight that, and then put the purple on. And again, it's laying, basically putting on your shadows first, highlighting those, and doing thin layers of the purple until I get the tone I want. So that's kind of the step I'll do. So next step will be in the spray booth after I get the primer on. Alright, in the spray booth, and we're lay down our first color for the pants, and it's going to be Mr. Color number 71, Midnight Blue. It's almost actually black, but it's got just a little bit of blue in it. So we're going to lay this down on everything. So I'll do this, I'll let this dry for a few minutes, and then we'll put down some highlights. So I'll come back after that. I want to point out that when you're spraying something like these pants that has a lot of texture in it, it's really important to spray from all directions. Because otherwise, if I just spray from one direction, you know, from here it looks fine, but as soon as I tilt it, I can see where there's no paint. So it's really important to spray from the left, right, top, bottom, all that stuff. Make sure you get paint all the fabric. So yeah, just make sure you get it from all directions. Otherwise, you're going to see areas where you missed. Just want to point that out. All right, so let that dry for 5 or 10 minutes just to kind of get the sheen down. And I just have Mr. Color GX number 1 white, my airbrush. And I think anyone who watches me, for the 5 of you that actually watch, you'll see that my techniques are very consistent as far as like what I do. Even the colors are very consistent. You know, I basically have probably half a dozen to a dozen colors I use all the time. and then I adjust those with clear paint and stuff like that. So now I think this part is supposed to be flipped down. It's supposed to be white, but I'm going to actually paint it purple first, and then I'm just going to really brighten it up later with some dry brushing and weathering. So right now I'm just going in and I'm hitting the high spots, you know, adding highlights. And what I'll do a little differently on this, I'll actually kind of briefly go over this with the white over the whole piece, just to kind of not much, just a little bit, like all these tips, the top edge in particular. Got my airbrush kind of backed off quite a bit. PSI's up kind of high, because what it does, it gives me a softer edge, and it gives it just a nice transition between the shadows and the highlights. Really kind of hitting these top parts pretty heavy. Maybe mix up a little more white, because I kind of changed my game plan a little bit. So I use the highlights and stuff to just accentuate the shapes. And I'm going to do the bottom side too. Even though you're not going to see it, you don't want it to be. So that good. You may see some of this, for sure. So I have a decision to make after I get the pants done. Is I really have to play with putting it together. Because after the pants are done, I technically could glue him together. I could glue the legs to the torso. So I have to play with actually putting this together and taking it apart to see if he's together as one piece. Can I put them together on the base with Thor? I think the last time I did it, it was easier to kind of put the feet in first, put Thor on, and then put the torso on. So I'm going to wrap them up probably in some saran wrap and play with that a little bit and come up with a game plan. I would love to be able to glue them together and just have them one piece. Because when they shipped them, they had them kind of bubble wrapped together with one piece. So I'm not sure if the factory plans on shipping them that way. Don't know. Of course, you guys that have pre-paints, they'll have it all figured out for you already. Okay, so I'm going to hit these edges a little bit too. Really just kind of the tips. Pretty hard. Let it fan up on both sides. And this is just like when I was doing the green. So this is, again, just all the groundwork. Just put in the highlights and shadows first. This is how I like to do it. So that way it's underneath the surface, it's not on top of the surface. It looks more natural to me. Okay. looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to fan over this a little bit, just to soften things up a little bit. Open up my needle. I have just enough paint in here to do this. I'll mix up some more for the pants, but it'll be the same thing on the pants. Again, I'm just going to add a little bit. I'm going to do a lot. Because I don't want the purple to go muddy. If I don't do this, then the purple will go real muddy in the shadows. So I had a comment on my flash paint up on how the reds looked really good and how they weren't muddy. Well, this is how you do that. You lay in your shadows and stuff first, and then you mist over a little bit with the highlight color, and that just makes the color pop so it doesn't get all muddy, because the thing with your shadow color is it can get muddy really quick. On the flash, I actually use brown as a base coat instead of black or like a dark red, and then that just helped add some warmth to the red when I put on my top coat. So that's all we're going to do there. So I'm going to do the same thing with the pants, same techniques and everything, and then we'll do the purple. So I'll go ahead and show the pants while I do it too, highlighting the pants, in case you guys want to see that. I'll just make the work in progress video longer, but that way you can see what I'm doing, for anyone who's interested. So here the sprinkle continues on this muscle, but it's not so dramatic, so I kind of do a bright spot and then fan it in. And then we have this muscle right here I'm going to highlight. Again, you have to kind of turn this thing in the light in all different directions to kind of see what's going on. Thing's heavy. So I'm hitting all the wrinkles first in the pants, and then I'll go back and do the muscles, because the wrinkles would be a brighter highlight than the muscle highlights, because the wrinkles are on top of the muscles. So do the wrinkles first, and then do the muscles. And when I do the muscles, it'll just make that highlight and the wrinkle a little bit brighter. And there's a bunch of tears and stuff here in the pants. Those will all get taken care of when I do the dry brushing for the weathering. So right now those are just going to look, you won't really see those until I do the weathering on these guys. So I'll have to get color approval first. And that may be tough because the color will change a little bit through the weathering process, but I don't want to do all this work and then weather it and then say the color's wrong, because, you know, this will take me several hours to do. I don't do anything fast, I'm slow. Little stitch marks right here. Singing.
hard to get up in here because the way it's put together. So I'll have to hit this highlight from both sides. If I can. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get my airbrush in there. That's a tricky angle. So as before, if the highlight's not as, if the wrinkle's not as crisp or as hard, I back the airbrush off so it's softer. When it's a really tight wrinkle, I get in close and do it like this. Otherwise, I back off and do it like that. Great little, really subtle details in this, even in the seam, because as your pants get tight, they wrinkle at the seam, so they sculpted that in there. Really nice touch. Real subtle, but makes a difference. So I'm gonna highlight that so you can see it. About got the wrinkles done. muscles. I got my airbrush in here to get these little stitches. Let's see. Getting there. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I like to get close so I can highlight the details where they are. Okay, so you can see that took a while. That's just the wrinkles, okay? Now we're gonna go in. I do want to hit these again, these tips, pretty hard. Now we're going to do the muscles. I missed a wrinkle here. And one right there. Okay. Now the muscles. So the muscles, is they're big and we're going to just back this off, and we're just going to make them nice and soft. And if I see a little air that's a little bit higher, I'll hit it a little bit harder. Like this spot right here is a tad higher than that spot right there, so I just put a little more on it. Not much. Like that. And big muscle right here. Like that. Like that. And then where all these wrinkles are, they'll just get brighter. And all those subtle variations will show through when I do the purple. I may have to take a break here. My dog is whining for some reason, and I'm the only one home, so I'm not sure if she needs to go outside and go potty or what. So, but I think you get the idea. So I'm going to take a break and do that, and then we'll do the purple. Okay, so this is what the white looks like on after the pants. So we're gonna let this dry down for a little bit, but you can see how all that wrinkling I did first is brighter than the muscles. So that'll be a brighter highlight than the muscle highlights. So it works really well to kind of do all those wrinkles first, then go in and hit all the muscles, because it just makes that highlight brighter and makes it stand out more. So let's dry for a little bit, and then we'll do the purple. Alright, so let that dry for a little bit, and now what I have in my airbrush is Mr. Color number 67, just purple. And let's start putting this on. respirator on. Forgot to put it on, and it's a good idea to do that. So what I'll do is I'll just put this on until I get the shade I want. Alright, so I'm not going to record this whole process because it could take a while, but you can see all that shading is coming through, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. They're probably like, where'd all your shading go? Well, this Mr. Color paint tends to dry down quite a bit as it dries, so it gets darker. So when I'm doing this technique in particular, I basically kind of put my color on until the shading looks like it's almost gone. So right now, like even in person, like I don't see a whole lot of my shading. As this dries, it will become more pronounced. So I'm gonna leave it here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit. I'm actually gonna go back in with some clear paint, pump up the shadows a little bit, and deepen the purple. But this is a good starting point for the purple. So now I'm gonna do that same thing to the little strap that goes around. Same thing that goes around his waist, right here. Gotta put my respirator on again. Okay, so right there. So now it kind of looks like all that shading I did is gone. It's there. I can see it a little bit, and as this dries down, it'll become more pronounced. So I'm gonna let this dry for a little while, and then I'm gonna come back with my clear colors and really bump up the shadows and just make this a deeper purple. So we'll give this about 15-20 minutes to do that. spray booth. So I was painting the pants, and I should have recorded the other process too. And this is kind of like what I was talking about in my live broadcast this morning, if anyone watched it. Basically, I was talking about a little bit of a communication gap between me and my client. So I did the pants. I thought they looked really good. I sent him a picture of it, and he's like, yeah, they look, they're like too bright. It needs to be darker. I'm like, okay, no problem. So I darkened them, and he sent me a couple reference photos. And then I sent him the picture again the following night. He's like, no, that's not the right colors. It's too dark. And I sent him back a photo of like, well, this is, if you want it to look like this is what I look like. And he's like, no, that photo is what I don't want. So he sent me a photo of what he didn't want, along with photos of what he kind of did want, and I wasn't sure, and I didn't understand that. So what he was implying to say is that he didn't want it dark, it was too bright, it needed to be darker, or the color had too much saturation in it, is what he was really saying. Like it was a different shade of purple. So I had, this is like the last rendition, the darker version. I darkened it down, I added more to the shadows, and then he finally sent me 2 color swatches, and like, oh my gosh, that's exactly, this would be perfect. And ironically, the color swatch that he sent me was pretty much what I had the very first time. It may have not looked like it in camera, but in person it did. So sometimes I have to tell my clients, like, look, so right now this is looking like white, but it's not. It's actually pretty damn close to what he wants, which is like a pale lavender, which helps give the pants a little warm look. So what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm just adding this to the highlights, and then I think it's going to be too white when I'm done with that, but it's you can see here what I'm kind of getting. Highlights here. So I'm going in and basically doing what I did the first time. So the first time I painted the pants, it took me about an hour to mask and about 3 hours to paint, because I got to go in and do all these highlights. The second time I did it, it took me only about an hour and a half to paint, because I basically went in and hit the shadows and then just kind of did a misting of the clear color. So now I got a couple hours of going in here again, hitting the highlights with this pale lavender like this. Again, I got my needle guard off. Now this paint is the Playmo Colors paint, which you can't get anymore. Anyone who has followed me since the Gundam days is very aware of this paint and the brand. I love the paint. The guy was an asshole, and I was lucky, one of the lucky ones actually got paint from him. But I still have a lot of it left, and that's actually one of my favorite colors. So I don't use it too often anymore, because if I run out of that color, I can't get any more. And I'm not as talented to be able to color match it with another brand. So I'm just taking that pale lavender and I'm hitting all the highlights, and pretty much just doing what I did the very first time, what I did with the white. And I'm being a little loose this time. I'm going to let this kind of flow into the other areas a little more than I normally would. So I think what I need to do is do this, do a light misting of this over the whole piece, and then hit it with the clear color again, because I think what my client, this is one of the situations where I think what my client thinks he wants and what he really wants are 2 different things. I think he has a picture in his mind, and it's hard. Either he's having a difficult time explaining to me, or I'm having a difficult time understanding it, of what he wants. So sometimes that's hard. You know, you have a picture in your mind, but you can't verbalize it or put it in writing of what you want. So anyway, when he's actually sent me the color swatches, that was perfect. It's like, okay, oh, that's the color you want. You didn't want it darker, you wanted it less saturation, because darkness and saturation are completely different things. Darker means darken what you have, make it darker, darker, darker. Less color means less saturation or less vibrant, so don't make it so colorful. So so yeah, that was a big, when he sent me that color swatch, like, that's perfect. That's the perfect thing I need to see to know what you're looking for. So now, even though this is really bright, this is drying down to the perfect shade. This is drying down to exactly what he sent me in his color swatch. As I put it on, it almost looks white. It's pretty damn bright. This paint's very thin out of the bottle. It's almost so thin that you think you can spray it right out of the bottle, but you can't. You'll get specks. So there's not a lot of pigment in it, but that's one thing that makes it spray so well. It goes on really, really smooth. So it's going on really thin. It's almost like a transparent right now. So as this dries, it dries down, and you're seeing through this highlight color underneath all the work I've already done. So I'm kind of hoping that, like I said, I think I may need to do this. I thought I may need to mist a light coat on the whole thing, but as it's drying down, I don't know if I do. I might. We'll see. So this is drying pretty quick. Like I said, there's not a lot of pigment in it. My battery's about to die on my phone, but so I wanted to show you this. So I'm going to do this for a little bit, and I'll see if I have enough battery left to show you the next step. Okay, so I've got the highlights resprayed, and I've already done a little bit of misting on this, so I'm just going through, and I'm just misting a little more of this pale violet on here, just to kind of soften things up a little bit, and it's looking pretty good. This is really pastel-y for my taste, so what I'm going to do is, and I'm going to, I don't know, hopefully this doesn't bite me in the foot. I'm going to go ahead and spray a very light coat of, I've got another color here, just violet, and it's a little more saturated, but this looks very pastel-y to me. So the highlights are a little too bright, I think. So I'm gonna do a very, very light coat of this violet over things, just to tone it down just a hair, to help tie it together a little more. So I'm gonna mix some of that up and we'll come back. Okay, so I put some of that Plamo color violet in my airbrush, and I've got it thinned way down. I usually thin Plamo color 1:1. I've got this thinned like 3:1, so it's very little paint is coming out. It's mostly thinner. Again, I don't want to go back to what I had. I just want to try to tone this down just a little bit, and you can see right there it added just a little bit to the highlights. And this right here is looks exactly like the color swatch I was sent. I mean, it's very little, just the smallest little spritz of paint. So I'm hoping this is what he wants and it gets approved. Because this will be the third time, 3.5 times I've painted the pants. So you saw I was kind of spraying it on the base, and I've taken off the base so I can kind of get it from the other angles. Like I said, on a piece like this, you have to kind of get it all around. Make sure you get everything. I think we're there. Yeah, that looks really good. I think that's a nice median tone from where I was to what he thinks he wants and to what I want. I think it looks good. Because this, and I have to say that this does give these look a slight worn look, which I will do more when I weather these to dirty them up a little bit, because we want to have these dirtied up just a hair. And I'm going to put this piece back on and see what that looks like compared to it. So like every time you see these are white. So what I may do is come back. I should do white. I'm not a big fan of just white. And do some more just the pale violet on that part. Bring it up really, really, really bright, and then knock it back down a little bit. So I'm gonna put some of this bright violet in here and hit that piece. So I'm over here behind. I don't want to get this on the pants. I guess, I mean, it kind of does, I don't know, does it make sense that this would be white because it's like the lining of his pants and that's what's being torn? I don't know. Personally, I think it looks kind of weird. I'm never a fan of that. I'm going to bring this up real bright compared to the pants. kind of got that look going on. I think that looks pretty good. All right. So now I'm actually going to hit this with a different top coat too. I've been using the Krylon matte, and even though it's a pretty flat finish, in photographs it's got a sheen to it. And this is the way that matte coat works. So what happens is the light hits that matte or the matte finish, and it kind of disperses underneath the surface. It bounces all the light rays around, so you get a kind of a sheen to it, even though it's flat. I'm actually going to go through and I'm going to seal this with, I don't have it right here, but it's going to be Vallejo polyurethane flat, and that'll give me a really, really flat surface, and hopefully that'll show up better in my photos, because half the challenge is taking photos of a work in progress and trying to convey what the piece actually looks like in person through work in progress photos. And so I struggle with that a lot, especially when I try to use my cell phone. So that's why I've been trying to use my digital camera. So I'm just going to use some thinner and clean my airbrush out, let this dry for a minute, and we'll put the polyurethane flat on there. So I don't use this too often, but the few times I have used it, I've really liked it. This is Vallejo polyurethane matte varnish. The reason I don't use this a whole lot is because this little bottle is crazy expensive. It's like to do a whole piece would be like expensive. And even though it's water-based, it does take a little longer for it to cure. And also, since it's a water base, my battery is really about to die. Since it's a water base, it's really hard to use as a step between steps. Because if I try to use this and then go do watercolors or something, this will come off. So basically, I'm going to seal it with the polyurethane. You thin it 1 part polyurethane matte to 1 part Vallejo thinner. You have to use their thinner. I've tried it with other stuff and it turns into muck. So 1 part this, 1 part that, sprayed on thinly, and you'll have a dead flat surface. So I'm going to stop here because my battery's about to die, and so I'll stop recording. So I'm going to call the pants done. I hope, knock on wood, that my client likes it, and then we'll move on from there. So stay tuned.